It's Cougar Sports Saturday.
That's caught! Touchdown! Stayed inside the boundary and gets in for 6.
Cougar Sports Saturday, a presentation of KSL Sports.
Ritchie right to the rim, driving score! He would not be denied!
BYU Sports Talk by Cougar fans for Cougar fans. Sponsored by Any Hour Services, Electrical, Plumbing, Heating, and Air. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Kyle Ireland. On Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
Good afternoon, Cougar Nation. Mitch Harper and Kyle Ireland with you, coming to you live from Broadcast House in Salt Lake City, Utah. It is a massive day for BYU football and BYU basketball. Cougar football is going to be in action late night tonight, 8:15 kick here on KSL against the TCU Horned Frogs. And then BYU basketball, a top 10 showdown against the UCONN Huskies, a blue blood. One of the great programs in college basketball. BYU will take on those Huskies in Boston tonight, 5 o'clock right here on KSL. So loaded day of BYU coverage here on KSL, Kyle. And it's an exciting day, especially on a day when, in a week that there was some news away from the courts and away from the field that is a little bit tough, but now that game day is here, I think you can't help but get excited.
Yeah, I mean, I think coming off of last week, Mitch, that Texas Tech game for the football team, they were disappointed in that performance. The fan base was disappointed, and really today is going to be a big test in these final 3 games. This is the first step for BYU to kind of rectify the mistake of losing 2 in a row last season, which really ended their hopes for getting to Arlington because of some tiebreaker situations. And then, you look at the basketball side of things, slow start earlier this week against Delaware, obviously came on and ended up winning that game in the second half. But, some off-the-court stuff that has risen up. And I think that, if BYU wants to end up in both of the places that they want to in either football and men's basketball this season, today is a good first step in getting there.
And that off-the-court issue for BYU basketball as we open up the show here on Cougar Sports Saturday. And we want you to interact with us throughout the day, 57500. You can text us or get at us on X, at KSL Sports, at Kyle Ireland, at Mitch_Harper. Kennard Davis, BYU basketball junior transfer from Southern Illinois. He was arrested on Thursday for an alleged DUI at approximately 11:45 a.m., on Thursday, November 13th, Provo police officers responded to a crash at the intersection of 900 West and Center Street. And according to Provo PD, during that accident investigation, officers found cause to place one of the drivers, Kennard Davis, age 20, under arrest for suspected DUI. Davis was transported to the Provo police station for further investigation and was subsequently cited with DUI charges. He was released for medical treatment for minor injuries, and his vehicle was impounded. So it's a tricky spot. I think, though, Kyle, I think in these sort of situations, what I've learned in the past sometimes, and it doesn't always apply to these instances, but I think you just kind of let all the facts come out. I think when it comes to BYU sports, there's such a rush to go to a knee-jerk reaction for a story like this and just say, honor code, this and that, and let's throw them out, or you're on the other side. Like, I think just let the facts come out. These sort of things can sometimes be resolved pretty quickly. I think you just take your time and let this play out. I would say, too, I'm pretty optimistic that guys like Kevin Young, BYU's athletic department with Brian Santiago, and the school at large with President Shane Reese and Vice President Keith Vorkink, they'll do the right thing. I think they did a good job when it came to Jake Retzloff. I think Kennard Davis, let's let the facts come out before ultimately making some sort of rash decision, because I think the last thing you want to do is just say, you hear a headline like this. Sometimes in the past at BYU would have said, he's just instantly gone. He's guilty before proven, guilty in the past. Now, I think you just take a little more patient approach, let the facts come out, and we'll see what happens. And then you act accordingly. But for now, I think you keep him with the team. The big question, I think, in the short term, does he play? I think, quietly in-house, have a suspension, but keep him around the team. And don't just give up on him over something like this and let the facts come out until, ultimate resolution.
Yeah, I think that's the smart approach, Mitch, just to let things kind of play themselves out. But as far as on the court is concerned, Kevin Young after the game on Tuesday, he sounded optimistic about the injury that Davis was
Achilles
dealing
tendon
with.
soreness.
And so that's a positive as far as his health is concerned as well. But the fact that they didn't have him against Delaware and they had to adjust their starting lineup, their rotations were thrown off a little bit. It's nice to have that game now that you look at that in the current situation because, let's say he doesn't play today or in future games, they've already dealt with that a little bit. And so Kevin Young, his staff can kind of make some adjustments with some previous knowledge of not having him in the lineup as opposed to just being like, we're in Boston, we're playing the number 3 team in the country. Those types of things on the fly are a little bit more difficult than having something to go off of.
That's a good point. And I think that, again, I think the biggest thing here, because, again, BYU, we know that this program and this school, when things like this happen away from the court with the athletes, it draws a lot of maybe criticisms from people that are not fans of BYU. And that I'm not even talking just like sports fans. There are detractors of BYU in general that will go in on things like this and just make it seem like, BYU just sold their soul for sports. That's not the case. You don't just give up on someone because of this, press release from Provo PD. Like, let the facts come out and then act accordingly once you have all that information in this situation. But, BYU is going to take on UConn tonight, 5 p.m. tip-off here on KSL. It's a huge task. And without Kennard Davis, assuming he's out, we would assume, again, no official word from BYU, their statement that they issued to the media in regards to Kennard Davis was they are aware of the allegations and are monitoring the situation. Pretty just vague general statement. It was kind of not much to really interpret there on that, but no official word whether he's playing or not. But I think that, with him dealing with Achilles tendon soreness, I think, and then paired with this, it makes sense to just say, hey, just sit out. Just take a breather and let Dawson Baker return to the starting lineup for the second consecutive game. It's going to be a tough challenge for the Cougs because UConn, a lot of continuity on their roster for their 5 starters in their starting 5 were on UConn's team last year. So, and that's noteworthy because in this era of college basketball, you have so much transactions and movement that it's pretty rare when you face a team that has 80% of its starting 5 from the previous year back. So UConn's a team that knows who they are already from an identity perspective early in the season, even though they've had a very light schedule to this point. But what a massive showdown, and it's a homecoming for BYU superstar freshman A.J. DeBonsa, who native of Brockton, Massachusetts, suburb of Boston. He heads back home, and huge opportunity for him to play in front of his hometown fans. But one thing I will say is I think that this is going to be a little bit of a hornet's nest for BYU, where it's going to be a rowdy UConn fan base ready to pounce and get an opportunity at a top 10 win for the Huskies. But I'm curious to see how BYU plays.
Yeah, I think that the fun thing about this matchup, Mitch, is BYU kind of is in a no-lose situation in this game, I think. They're in a position where maybe just let AJ, let him loose in this game. Let him show off the star potential and star talent that he has.
I'm curious to see who UConn lines up on AJ. Is it Alex Caraban, who's 6'8"? He's a Boston native, so it's a little bit of homecoming for him. So you have 2 Boston guys going at it one-on-one. So, but yeah, I think that's, BYU hasn't been in a top 10 clash like this since Jimmer versus Kawhi, 2011. That was 14 years ago. So it's almost like a game, too, where, like Texas Tech experienced last week against BYU football, it's almost a moment for Tech to validate the way they're going about building their program. Did they capitalize? They did. BYU came up short. For BYU basketball, it's almost like, hey, we've arrived. Because UConn's one of the best programs in college basketball in the last 25 years. They've got, 5 national titles? They have been outstanding. For a quarter century, they have been the newest blue blood, and they are elite. 2 of the last 3 national championships. So if BYU could get this win or just be in position to have a chance to pull off this upset, what will feel like a road game, that'd be huge, I think, for this team and just kind of validate to the nation, hey, BYU basketball with Kevin Young has arrived, and they're going to be a player on the national scene this year and potentially for the years to come.
Yeah, and I think the way that the game ended on Tuesday, Mitch, against Delaware, it was nice to see the chemistry of the big three of BYU kind of come together with A.J. DeBonsa, Richie Saunders, and Rob Wright, who almost had a triple-double. Those three need to have a performance against UConn like they did in the second half against Delaware, where they really just put the team on their back, took them, 20-plus minutes to kind of get to that point because they did start so poorly against Delaware, but it was a good performance. It was nice to see Richie get going from three-point land in the second half as well because, they really need him to be one of those knockdown shooters. BYU, I would say if there's any weakness on this team, it is some shooting around AJ and Rob and needing to have those guys be able to facilitate the offense and kick out to guys like Richie, Tyler Murus, and so on. And so it was nice to see that performance because you have to be on your A game if you're going to be able to beat a team like UConn. You mentioned 2 out of the 3 last national championships. Dan Hurley's got this thing rolling up there in Connecticut, so BYU's got to be on their A game.
BYU basketball tips off at 5 o'clock. BYU football at 8:15 against the TCU Horned Frogs. Both the Cougs and the Horned Frogs on the gridiron looking to bounce back, and all eyes are on quarterback Bear Bachmeier, how he responds from his first loss as a starter. This was Bear on how he plans to respond heading into this TCU game.
The true test of a man and a football team is, how you bounce back from adversity, and so he's kind of just been telling me that, he's got some great experience with that, we just got to bounce back and obviously learn from it and grow.
Be curious to see how this team responds and grows from tonight's matchup against TCU. Coming up next here on Cougar Sports Saturday, we'll hear from one of Bear Bachmeier's top targets in the passing game, JoJo Phillips, next here on Cougar Sports Saturday, live on this game day here in Salt Lake. It's BYU, TCU, BYU UConn coverage here on the legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio.